Hello, my name is Lizzie, and this is Lizzie's Literary Life, and today we are doing my October Tipsy Wrap Up. Cheers! So I am drinking Golden Apple Hard Cider, because I felt it was seasonal, and also it's tasty. Why do I always make those weird eyes at the camera when I'm drinking? I'm like the emoji, and I had to cut out so many weird eyes of the last one. The last one with the Bahama Mama drink was a monster to edit. That's why it took so long, because it just was such a mess. So I'm going to try to be less of a mess today. But anyway, we are here to talk about books. We are here to talk about I'm getting distracted by my cat eating his food off the ground because he knocked it over. I don't know why he does that. I don't know why he prefers to eat it off the ground, but whatever. We are talking about the books that I read in October. So, should we do some stats? Let me look. I read 9 books in October, which is the same as September. And in September, I said it wasn't very good for me, but I don't know. I feel like that's probably going to be the standard while I'm in school like this. So I'm going to say I'm proud of myself. And it was 135 pages per day. 135 pages per day is pretty darn solid. And I read 100% of my TBR before the end of the month. So I read a mix of genres, but mostly fantasy, which actually I've been reading a lot of fantasy this year. And I'm kind of surprised. It's a little bit weird. It was all mostly adult, a little bit of middle grade, mostly ebook, some audio, a lot of 5 stars. So I'm excited to get into that. The first book I read was Akata Witch by Nnedi Okorafor, probably. This is a middle grade fantasy that was on my August TBR about a girl who it's like middle grade YA. I think it's middle grade, but on Storygraph it was YA. I don't know. But it's about a girl who finds out she's a witch in Nigeria, and magic ensues. So I gave this 3 stars. I didn't really like it. I think partly that's because it took me so long to read. I started it and I put it down, and then I picked it back up and I put it down. But I wanted more from it. I wanted more of the magic system and less of the interpersonal drama, but also just more in general. I don't know. It was a lot of we go to this one place and this one person tells us a thing, and then we go to another place and the other person tells us a thing. And I'm not going to say it was boring, but it was kind of boring. Oops. Next, I read The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. This is book 1 in the Mistborn. I have a lot of spit in my mouth. This is book 1 in the Mistborn trilogy, the first Mistborn trilogy. And I loved this. I gave it 5 stars. It is a world where the evil force won, and it's post, there's an evil Dark Lord or whatever, and the magic system is really cool. It's based on metal and ingesting metal, which sounds really weird, but then it's so natural in the actual writing, and the writing is just so good. And even the fight scenes, and I hate fight scenes, but I could actually follow them because they were really technical, because there was so much technical magic stuff going on, and I really liked following that. And it just was written really, really well, and it was engaging, and I hated Elend. More on that later. But I really liked this book. I liked Finn. I liked the characters. I love, what's his name, Sazed. Just good, and it was a really good audiobook too. Next, I read Notes on an Execution by Dania Kukafka. This book was also 5 stars. It made me almost cry, and I need to drink more before I talk about it. I closed my eyes to avoid doing the weird eyes at the camera thing. This is about a guy who's on death row, and the story is told partly through his final hours and partly through the stories of the women in his life, like private investigator who like was working on the case, or not private investigator, like the cop that was working on the case, detective, and his mother, and someone from his childhood, and just like people who have been, and his, women in his life talking about the times they encountered him. And it's just such a beautiful like character study, and all of the characters, I mean, especially the main guy, are super flawed, but it was just really, really beautifully done. I loved it and absolutely recommend it. I spilled. Everything's fine. Okay. Feel like I have a beard of beer. It's not beer, it's cider. I feel like I am much more chill today than I usually am. I usually am like talking a mile a minute, like craziness, and I am just like chilled out today. So good for me. It's been a long week. It's Thursday. Thursday is like the end of the week for me because Sunday is really heavy for tutoring, and then I work student teaching Monday to Thursday as well as tutoring and class. So like my weekend is basically Friday, Saturday. So even though I work Saturdays and I have to do homework on Fridays. But anyway, Thursday night is my like Friday night, and it has been a long week. Next, I read Hang the Moon by Alexandria Bellafleur, and I gave this 4 stars, and I really liked it. This is the sequel. Oh, we're getting into Squash That series reads. This is the sequel to, This is the sequel to Written in the Stars by Alexandria Bellafleur, which is a loose, very loose Pride and Prejudice retelling that I read in maybe like February. It was while I was in New York, maybe March. It's in a Tipsy wrap up, I think. No, I started those in April. Maybe it's in the April video. Doesn't matter. I'm not going to go back and look. You can go back and look. I'll put the playlist in the description of all my Tipsy wrap-ups, and you can see if I wrap up that book anyway, ever. I don't know what those words were just now that came out of my mouth. This is the sequel, companion novel. It's a romance, and it's about Darcy's brother, Brandon, and her best friend, Annie. And they are getting to, well, I'm not going to spoil it. It's set in Seattle. It's very based in Seattle in the way that the other one kind of wasn't. It was like very Seattle because Annie doesn't live there, so she was like a tourist kind of, and Brandon was like showing her around. It was cute. I liked it. I definitely am getting into my romance era, the way that I was like able to read this male-female romance and like not hate it was like it's remarkable for me. But yeah, I thought this was good. Also, it got me a lot of points for Squash That series, not because it was a lot of points in itself, but because it got duplicated like 3 times during challenge day. If you don't know what Squash That series is, you're missing out. It was really fun. I did that in October. I'm gonna burp again. Delicate, ladylike. Next, I read Anne Boleyn, A King's Obsession by Alison Weir. This is book 2. Theme here is sequels because of Squash That series. This is book 2 in the 6 Tudor Queens series by Alison Weir that covers each of Henry VIII's 6 wives in succession. I read this book about Anne Boleyn and I liked it. It was 4 stars. I didn't like it quite as much as Catherine of Aragon, but I did like it. I thought that Anne's character wasn't as consistent as Catherine's was. And I think that, like, sometimes real people aren't consistent, but I didn't see the evidence necessarily in the, like, dialogue she was pulling, Alison Weir was pulling from letters, for that inconsistency or those like changes in Anne's feelings, because Anne kind of had like a turning point. It's history, it can't be spoiled, where at first she was like, well, I don't love the king and I don't care about him, and then she was like, but I really want to be queen. And like, I get that, but she like let ambition for the crown take over so suddenly, and I don't know how I felt about that. She also like, I don't know, I think it's obviously very well researched and very well written because Alison Weir is a fantastic researcher and writer. I don't know if I entirely agree with the way that Anne Boleyn was characterized, but it's definitely interesting and definitely a good read if you're interested in that kind of thing. And I'm excited to continue with the series. Maybe I'll read Jane Seymour this month. This was for the tutor read along. I read Catherine of Aragon in time for the live show. The live show for Jane Seymour is like this weekend or something, so. Next, I read Lodestar by Shannon Messenger, which is book 5, I think, in the Keeper of the Lost Cities series. This was another one of these. Like, I feel like there's one every month, and they're all kind of the same, but I like them. This was 3.5 stars, but a solid 3.5 stars. I think the series does definitely get better after the first book. Like, the plot gets more compelling, more, like, complex. I don't really remember what happened in this one, and I also probably can't tell you because of spoilers, but this is, if you like middle grade and you want just like a, not like high quality, but like just a fun time that's like a compelling fantasy plot with some, oh my gosh, I should show you my love brain frame. Pause. Also, potentially spoilers, if you care about like who has crushes on who in the Keeper of the Lost Cities universe throughout the series. It doesn't even show any relationships. It's just like the crushes. Maybe skip ahead a little bit, but I don't think it's actually a spoiler. Excuse me for a moment. Do you like my socks? They are fall foxes. Okay, so brain framing is this like, you're getting an education lesson now. Brain framing is this like tool, mind mapping tool. Basically, it's just a tool for structuring thoughts, and there's all sorts of different types of brain frames, and they're really useful for English language learners, and because I learned about them in my English language learner ELL whatever class, but they're a really cool tool. There's like cause and effect ones and compare and contrast ones, like an alternate to a Venn diagram, and like sequencing ones. There's all sorts of different ones I made, and it looks like a complicated flowchart. We had to make some just about like whatever we saw in our lives that we could brain frame. I made a showing relationships brain frame about the crushes in the Keeper of the Lost Cities universe. So, as you can see, on the top we have all of the characters, and then has a crush on this. The arrows point to which character on the top has a crush on which character in the bottom. There is one character who is a strong, independent woman and has a crush on no man or woman. There's no gay in this universe, unfortunately. Though, that's debatable. But, yes. I'm very proud of it. I think it's beautiful. And I hope that my professor giggled when she saw it. That's my brain frame. That's my Keeper of the Lost Cities chat. I kind of love this series. Like, I feel like every time I say that I have to make the caveat that it's not actually very good. But it's so compelling and so, like, compulsively readable. Whenever I finish one, I'm like, I have to read the next one right away. And there's always a hold, so I have to wait. But I'm excited to read the next one. I just got it from the library, so from Libby. Next, we are getting through these. Next, I read The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson. This is book 2 in the Mistborn series, the sequel to The Final Empire, which I read earlier in the month. This was also 5 stars. It was phenomenal. I think I liked it. There were some parts I liked more and some... Actually, I think I liked it more. I don't know. I'm not sure which one I liked better. They were both 5 stars. Elend, who I hated in the first book, I actually kind of liked him in the second book, so... I don't know what that says, but... This is... I can't really tell you what this one's about. But I liked it. It was more... kind of more political, and I really liked that. Like, the first one was, like, strategizing, but this was, like, actual government political. which I guess I like political fantasy. I don't know. I was a fan of it. And I know Bailey said she liked this one less because there was less of a historical romance aspect, which we had with Ellen and Vin in the first one, but, because that's a spoiler. But I don't know. I didn't necessarily miss that. I did like Ellen better in the second book anyway. So yeah, and I was talking to my brother about this, and there's so many like fantastic like thematic parallels between the ending of the first book and the ending of the second book and stuff like that. So I really thought this was very good. And The Hero of Ages has like a 7-week hold on the audiobook on Libby. And since I've read the first 2 on audio, I really want to read the third one on audio. I like could get it from my physical library, but I just want to read it on audio, so I guess I'll wait and I'll hopefully remember what happened in the end. Next, I read A Master of Jinn by P. Djeli Clark, which I gave 3.5 stars. This is a like steampunk alternate history fantasy Egypt, where basically at the time of the Industrial Revolution, Egypt has magic, and so they become a world power alongside like Great Britain. And that's such a cool concept. It was such a cool concept, and the characters were so cool, and I really liked the whole like steampunk vibe. I thought that was great. I think the plot was just so. We have like this guy who's like this magical guy who's like pretending to be this Al-Jahiz, this like basically ancient like spirit type thing. I wasn't super clear. And they're like trying to figure out who that person is because they're like causing all sorts of drama and like killing people and stuff. I guess that's drama. Killing people is drama. But I guessed the twist, like who the villain was, so early on, and then it just played out exactly how I expected, and that was kind of disappointing. Like I think like I don't have to be 100% surprised, because that means that like in some cases that means it's not good writing because there was no foreshadowing. Like guessing what's gonna happen is not always a bad thing, but I wanted one more twist that was like a twist, like a climax that made it exciting, because it was not necessarily exciting to watch it play out. And the ending was just, I just was waiting for one more thing in the ending, and it didn't come. But overall, I would recommend this. This is in a series. It's the first full-length novel, but there are a bunch of short stories and novellas, and I've read one of the short stories before, and that was really good. I think I liked that better, maybe. But I definitely will read the other short stories because some of them have super cool concepts. But this, I think, was on the good side of okay, I will say. And lastly, I read You Feel It Just Below the Ribs by Jeffrey Cranor and Janina Mathewson. This has backstory. To entice you to listen to the backstory, I gave it 5 stars. I thought it was phenomenal. I think everyone should read it. Now, this is based, or like not based on necessarily, but like related to a podcast called Within the Wires that Jeffrey Cranor and Janina Mathewson write. Jeffrey Cranor is one of the writers on Welcome to Night Vale, which I was super obsessed with in high school. And I really should get back into listening to it because I'm sure it's still good. But Jeffrey wrote a podcast with Janina Mathewson called Within the Wires, and they're on the 7th season. I actually haven't listened to the 6th yet. I'm working on it. But all of the seasons are 10 episodes, and they are found audio. So like, like found footage horror films. They're like found audio in the format of found audio from an alternate history 20th century. So the first season is like relaxation cassettes from this. I'm not even going to tell you where they're from, but they're relaxation cassettes. The second season is museum audio tour guides. The third season is dictaphone recordings. One of the seasons, I can't remember. No, the fourth. One of the seasons is voicemails, and I think that one's really good. But it's so slow burn that you learn about the world and like what happened in this alternate history. Because there's something that happened called the Great Reckoning, and now we're in the new society. And you are like drip fed information about what's going on. Like if you start listening to if you start at season 1, which I think you should, but I'm going to have the caveat of wait until like episode 8 before you give up. They're only 20-minute episodes. Because at first you're like, what the heck is going on? This is just weird, like, and there's nothing happening, and it's going to make you fall asleep. That's not a glowing review. I promise it's good. But you get so, like, I think the first season is maybe not the best place to start. Maybe the second season is the best place to start, actually, because that gets pretty compelling right away. But you are getting information so slowly, and you have so many questions. And this novel is a novel set in the same universe, and it's about a psychologist who is working within this universe, and it's about her life. And I don't want to give too much away, but you get so much information that you have just been wanting as you've listened to this podcast over the years, you being me. I have wanted all of this information. I like literally have been at the point of like creating a timeline. Like in this episode, it says that in 1963, this happened. And in this episode, it says that in 1958, this happened. Like that is how like intrigued you get. And this gave so many answers, and it just, even like on its own, I don't want to tell you that you have to listen to the entire podcast to read this book, because I think you would enjoy it as a standalone. You just would enjoy it more if you'd listen to the whole podcast. But even on its own, it's just a fantastic book. Like, it's a compelling narrative, and you're like learning about this world that's just so interesting and so different. And I just thought it was so good. I've been talking about this book for like 5 minutes, but I thought it was so good. And I can't believe it took me so long to read it. I like had fallen off I didn't listen to season 6 because I just like wasn't aware of it, I guess, because I wasn't listening to podcasts as much, and so I wasn't really aware of this book because it came out during season 6. Anyway, it was a 2021 release, and I'm surprised I haven't gotten to it until now. But it is so good, and you should read it, and you should listen to the podcast, and it's so good, and it's so good. And I loved it so much. And that's all the books. I gave it 5 stars. And that's all the books I read in October. Guys, this is Lizzie from the future, because I forgot to tell you something very important. All of my honorable mentions, such as DNFs and children's books, that are not on my regular spreadsheet. I had one DNF, and that was A Whole New World by Liz Braswell, which I read like 2% of and was just like, this is not for me right now. But my honorable mention children's books, I read, I believe, 8 Magic Treehouse books this month for Squash That Series. And I squashed that series, and the other team squash. That's my squash punch. Squash. Actually, a squash is more like a squash. Anyway, first I have to keep this straight. First, I read Night of the Ninjas, which I do not remember at all. It had some ninjas. I gave it 3 stars. Next, I read Afternoon on the Amazon, which was 5 stars. I think this one was really good. It had like a monkey and some piranhas and some mangoes being thrown. It was good. I liked it. Next, I read Sunset of the Sabretooth, which was 4 stars. This one was less good. They were like cold. But they're cold in the other one as well. Aren't they cold? Is this the one where they're wearing their bathing suits? I think it is, actually. They're wearing their bathing suits, and they're like, we should go to the Magic Treehouse. And Jack is like, let's change first. And Annie's like, no, let's go. And then they end up going to the Ice Age. Poor choices were made. Next, I read Midnight on the Moon, which I gave 4 stars also. And this one was pretty good. There was like a moon man who went, oh, I'm a moon man. And, yeah, next I read Next I read Dolphins at Daybreak, which I gave 4 stars. This one, as we were talking about in the live show earlier today, was genuinely scary because there was a threat that they were going to drown and also be eaten by sharks. So there's that. And there also were dolphins. And I remember loving this one as a kid. Next, I read Ghost Town at Sundown. I was about to say by Mary Pope Osborne. These are all by Mary Pope Osborne, who is an actual person and not a series of ghostwriters, which is like different for children's series, at least nowadays. They're all ghostwriters. Like I remember the Rainbow Magic series that I loved so much as a child. I was like devastated to find out that Daisy Meadows is not a real person. Like, shocker, not a real person. Also, those books are so formulaic that I literally wrote one as a child. I was like, I know exactly what could happen because they all happen the exact same way. Anyway, this one I remember as a child being spooky, and it was kind of spooky. Next, I read Lions at Lunchtime, and this one I gave 3 stars, but honestly, I remember it not at all because I was quite drunk when I read it. And apparently there was a thing about peanut butter, but I like literally just missed that. So. And lastly, I read Polar Bears Past Bedtime, which I didn't give a rating at the time, but I liked it better than Lions, so I think I'm going to give it 4 stars. I'm not doing half stars on these Magic Treehouse books, so 4 stars it is. This one, they like swam on their bellies like polar bears. It was cute. And that is my honorable mentions, my Magic Treehouse books. And I think we're going to go back to the video now. Okay, bye. I liked most of these books. The worst one was Akata Witch, which I still liked. So that's really solid. A really, really solid rating month for me. And I guess that's all I have to say. I hopefully will edit this soon so that you'll actually see it like near the beginning of the month. I think it's on my to-do list to edit tomorrow, so maybe you'll see it on Friday, November 4th. If you do, leave me a congratulations in the comments below. And smash that like button. I was about to say poggers, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Leave me a comment if you've read any of these books, or if you want to, or if you have any recommendations for me based on these books, or if you just want to say hello, or if you want to say congratulations for editing this fast, or boo, you suck for editing this slow, or tell me your favorite color of grape. There is a correct answer. That's not very seasonal. You can tell me that, but also, as a seasonal question, tell me your favorite apple. Favorite type of apple. Mine is apple crisp. Not apple crisp, that's not what it's called. Honey crisp. That's a very basic answer, but I love a honey crisp. But like, honey crisps are like expensive. So like, if I'm getting, honestly, apples are kind of boring. Like, of all the fruits, they're the most boring fruit. So I don't get apples very often. But if I was just to get an apple like at the grocery store and honey crisps weren't available, I would get a Gala. That's my like go-to, like when I was growing up, all the apples we had were Gala. So that's my like classic fave. Anyway, leave me a comment, like, and subscribe. I do this every month. I also play a TBR game. You should watch my November TBR here if I remember to link it, or you can just like click on my channel and subscribe. And I'm going to stop talking now. Okay, bye.